Brilliant. Well, look, let's make a start. Shall I make a start?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Well, look, uh, I'm going to take you through the journey of the SARS-CoV-2 vaccines. It really is an absolutely amazing breakthrough. I promise you, I assure you, there were no corners cut in developing these vaccines. What is amazing is I've been in this business over 30 years, and I know that it takes very, very long time. But it takes very long time because of bureaucracy and lack of funding and lack of enthusiasm and interest from the decision makers. And when all those gates were all lined up in one go and all the gates were all opened, the money, the enthusiasm, the urgency, the lubrication of we wish to enable the vaccines to be created, tested, and manufactured. In less than 12 months, we were able to make vaccines, and that is amazing. So please be reassured, the vaccines were not made with corners cut. The vaccines were made in record time because there was a bottomless pot of money given to the pharmaceutical companies to do their experiments and present us with a vaccine that has been shown to work. So these mRNA vaccines that you will be familiar with the names now, the mRNA. So the mRNA vaccines provides the mRNA is a code. It basically is a code. It's a little code. It's a little instruction. It's an instruction to your cells to make spike protein. So what we do is we get the SARS-CoV-2 virus and work out where along its mRNA, where along its RNA, where along its RNA is the gene for the manufacture of the spike protein. So if you can imagine a long string of RNA, the code that codes for everything that is the SARS coronavirus 2, the outer casing, the spike protein, the virus, RNA, the whole caboodle is coded in what we would call a long string of RNA. And along that long string is a shorter region in that string where the code for manufacture of spike protein is to be found. So initially you get a virus, and then you know this is the genome, the entire genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And along the genome is this little section here, which codes for the spike protein. So we take that little section only and we manufacture it. We manufacture it in the laboratory. So compare this with the influenza vaccine. With regards to the influenza vaccine, what we do is we grow the influenza virus in chick embryo cells. We grow it, then we harvest it, and then we kill it, and then we get the protein, the RNA fragments, bits and pieces of the seasonal influenza virus, and then we manufacture the vaccine. So that takes a long time. You know, you have to have millions, if not billions and billions of eggs. In the eggs, chick embryos, chick cells, we then incubate the influenza virus, and then we allow it to grow, then we harvest it, then we denature it, and then we make the vaccine. We have an urgency, pandemic. We haven't got billions of chick embryo eggs in which to incubate the SARS-CoV-2 virus, harvest it, get its spike protein, bottle it, etc. Although there are vaccines which are doing exactly that, same pattern, same platform as the seasonal influenza virus. So these Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines are made with that little segment of the RNA. We call it the mRNA, messenger RNA. And that messenger RNA, in other words, we attach a little bit of the message, meaning make some spike protein for me. That's the message. So that is encased like a golf ball. So the outer casing is lipid. It's a lipid nanoparticle. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny particle, 10 to the minus 9. So it's the mRNA, which is synthetically made in a laboratory. So instead of, harvesting it from somewhere or whatever, we synthetically make it. And because it's synthetically made, you can have reliability of the process. So it's reliably made, reliably quality controlled, and you know that you asked for mRNA to be made, and you know that you have only made mRNA and nothing else. So it's quality control, it's quality reassured, it's the same product time and time again, same formula, same. So in other words, it's pretty safe, it's very efficient, and it's very quick, and you can make it to large scale that way in the laboratory. So the mRNA is taken and encased in a lipid film, and that lipid makes a little tiny ball. It's so tiny you can't see it with your naked eye. Obviously, it's 10 to the minus 9. It's a nanoparticle. And then it is suspended in a liquid, and that suspended liquid of tiny little balls of lipid enclosing the mRNA is the Moderna or the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. That's what it is. Okay. So the special delivery mechanism is the mRNA is encased in a lipid film, biofilm, and it is injected into your arm, and then because it is lipophilic, so it encounters a cell membrane. That's the cell membrane it encounters. That's where the ball-like shape of the slide is showing with the swirling arrow. And because it's lipid fat, it is taken in by the cell. And once it's taken in by the cell in your arm, muscle cells, in other words, the lipid dissolves as soon as it enters your cells, and it releases the code, the mRNA. And that code goes to a little organ that we have in your cells. It's called a ribosome. And what the ribosome does is it receives the instructions. The instructions are the mRNA. It receives the instructions, and it basically transcripts the instructions. It's a conveyor belt type thing. It receives it, and the instructions are make this protein. So all that it does is it makes the trivalent protein to represent the spike protein that is on the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And when it's made this spike protein, it expresses it on the outside of the cell. So it's presented to stimulate an immune response. So the spike protein is made by the ribosomes, and then it's expressed on the outside of the cell. And then your immune system comes along and recognizes this alien protein and says, I don't like you. You don't belong to this body here. I'm going to attack you. So I'm going to make immunity against you. So I'm going to make antibodies. And more importantly, I'm going to make immune memory, so that when I see you and your type again, I will be prepared for you, prepared to make lots of antibodies to neutralize you, eliminate you. And that is the Pfizer BioNTech Moderna vaccine. Now then, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is slightly different. Again, it is very clever. What we do with this AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is we use a chimpanzee adenovirus that has been altered to never reproduce. So it never multiplies in your body. It's just there. It's a carrier. but it never reproduces. So attached to this virus, we have uh, a code to tell your nucleus, right? This time it is the nucleus, okay? So the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is injected. It is a chimpanzee adenovirus. In other words, the one that causes flu, common cold-like infections. So it's a mild illness, if anything. But we know that the adenovirus can infect. It's infectious to human cells. So it infects the human cell. By what I mean by infect, it enters the human cell. Having entered the human cell, wait for this, it goes to the nucleus. And at the nucleus, it has the instruction bag. The instructions are make mRNA. So instead of having that clip, as you noticed, I said to you, of the Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna vaccine, which is a little segment of mRNA directly injected into your arm, the AstraZeneca Oxford one is a virus. It's a chimpanzee virus that has been altered to never reproduce. It can't multiply and give you illness. And that goes to the nucleus. It goes to the nucleus and it tells the nucleus one thing. It carries an instruction. Make me some mRNA. And I want you to make me this type of mRNA, this one here. These are the instructions. The instructions are for the spike protein. So the nucleus makes the mRNA, which then leaves the nucleus and goes into the cell cytoplasm. It meets the ribosome, and the ribosome encounters the mRNA made in the nucleus and transcripts it and makes a spike protein. And then that spike protein is expressed outside and you make immunity. So now, ladies and gentlemen, you know more about how the Pfizer, Moderna, and the AstraZeneca vaccines work. You know more than, I promise you, most doctors, most healthcare workers, and most members of the public. You've learned something. That how the Pfizer, Moderna ones work and how the AstraZeneca Oxford one works. It's good to know. Knowledge is good. And once you have this knowledge, you are less frightened of it. So the vaccines, any one of those, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, do nothing else. Nothing at all. It doesn't interfere with your DNA. It doesn't interfere with your fertility. It doesn't interfere with anything. You will ask me about blood clots and things. I will address that separately. But suffice to say that these vaccines are very precise and they do only what they're meant to do and nothing more. They come, they go, they do their bit and they're gone, you see. And this thing here depicts what I've been talking about is the mRNA. The mRNA is read by the ribosome, and the ribosome makes that, club-like thing that you notice. And that club-like thing is then expressed on the outside of the cell, and then you make antibodies against that club-like thing, which is a spike. So with respect to variants, I think it is also knowledge is power, and I really want to share with you what variants are. So variants equals, there's two types. There's a drift and a shift. So when you have RNA, they reproduce, and as they reproduce, they make mistakes. And then that mistake, and then the mistake, and the mistake, and the mistake, and the mistake is a drift. So as you reproduce, you make mistake, because RNA viruses don't have a checking system. And because they don't have a checking system, they are prone to make mistakes. And as a mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. So you start with the ancestral SARS-CoV-2 virus, which started in Wuhan in China 2019, and then it reproduces, and it makes mistakes. And those mistakes are drifts. So if you look at the SARS-CoV-2 virus 2 years compared to 2019, there will be drifts. It will have changed a little bit. Most of these changes are inconsequential. It's irrelevant. It is of no deep any consequence. Every now and then there is a big change, a big mistake, and that mistake gives rise to a variant of concern. And so basically, reproduction, as you reproduce more and more and more and more, as you reproduce, you make mistakes. And sometimes the mistake is advantageous to the virus. And that advantageous to the virus equals a headache for us. So we started with the Alpha variant, which arose in Kent, and then we got to the Delta variant, which arose in India. And the significance of the Delta variant is that it is more infectious. And because it's more infectious, it is, you need less of it to get infected by. So if you needed a infecting dose of, let's just take a round figure, 100,000 virus particles to set up an infection, with the Delta variant, you will need 50,000 virus particles. You see, lot less to create a infecting dose. So the Delta variant is more infectious. Luckily, the Delta variant and all the other variants, the Alpha, the Beta, the Delta, are not vaccine bypassing. So there is cross immunity for Alpha, Beta, Delta. Beta is the one that we're concerned about because it appears to neutralize antibodies a little bit more. In other words, the efficacy for the Beta one, that's from South Africa, drops a little bit against the vaccines that we're using at the moment. So we're always watchful about vaccine bypassing variants. But my answer to you all empirically is a vaccine is expected to cross-cover alpha, beta, delta, epsilon, zeta, etc., because essentially we're attacking the spike protein, that club-like thing. And unless that club-like thing changes dramatically in its structure, in its shape, then we will not have to worry about a variant that is bypassing vaccines. So mutations, will be observed. So I don't want to bore you with this slide here, but basically that is to depict, as I was saying to you, a whole, or I put it like this. This is the RNA, and then different parts of the RNA code for different parts of the virus. The outer shell, the inner shell, the proteins, the spike proteins, etc. It's all coded in that one long string. So yes, we've had lots of variants, and we will continue to have variants. Now that if you've been following me carefully, you will know that the variants arise as a result of reproductions. And you will have heard I say that we really need to suppress infections in all parts of the world, because more infections equals more reproduction cycles. And the more reproduction cycles you have, the more chances for those mistakes in its reproduction to happen. And more mistakes equals more drifting from the original ancestral SARS-CoV-2 virus. And we don't want one of these drifts to be of concern, i.e. a variant of concern. So the B117 lineage, that's from South Africa. And as my blue notation says, it still is protected by the vaccines, i.e. the antibodies, slightly less, but it still protects, and that's the good thing. And I want to really emphasize to you all that there is no one vaccine is better than the other. It depends along a long continuum when and where the vaccines were tested in its trial phase. So the bottom line is this. This is very important knowledge for all of you to take home, which is in terms of death, in terms of preventing you from going onto a ventilator, which vaccine is better? Okay? And the answer is all of them. Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Oxford. I'm focusing on those three. Okay? So which one? You say to me, doctor, I want the very best vaccine. And the answer is take the next available vaccine. That's the answer, right? So the answer is, I want to be protected. And the question, the issue is, I want to be protected, meaning I don't want to die from a severe illness. That's protection. Because none of the vaccines, none of them prevent you from getting mild or moderate infection. None of them. Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, they all can give you mild or moderate infection. But all of them, all three platforms, there's two platforms, three vaccines, yeah? Pfizer and Moderna are similar platforms. So these vaccines in the United Kingdom considerably protect you to a large degree. I'm talking 95% plus from severe illness. It's wonderful. I can live with a mild illness. I'll be in bed for a few weeks. I can live with a moderate illness. I will be in bed for 4 weeks. But the specter of severe disease and never recovering from it is something completely different. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to walk. I want to be able to swim. I want to be able to live, function. I don't want damaged lungs. I don't want to be incapacitated after my infection. Incapacitated for life if you have got ground glass permanent changes in your lungs. Incapacitated for life. This is serious. How do you stop yourself from getting incapacitated for life? Get immunized. So what is the way forward? I talk a lot about aerosols because look at that on the left, my left anyway, the aerosol dispersion cone. The man stands there and he's throwing out virus particles. That's the red dots. And you get hit by enough red dots, you're going to get infected. And in the short range, the dotted black dots are the heavy droplets. But you can tell straight away that if you are downwind from somebody who is spewing out trillions of virus particles, you can get hit. And of course, unfortunately, if you are indoors, these virus particles, because they're tiny, 10 to the -9 and beyond, they remain suspended in air for longer. So what I'm trying to say to you is you can walk into a room where I was there 15 minutes before you, and I was infectious, and I threw out trillions of virus particles into a room with poor ventilation. And as a result, that room is still contaminated. So what I'm trying to say is in a room, you need to have fresh air, lots of air. And what that air is doing is it's diluting the number of virus particles that hit you. And we hope that it is sufficiently diluted that you don't get infected. That's ventilation. It's not a very complicated rocket science. So you can see A and B are close to each other and the density is much greater and they're going to get infected. Whereas person C further away has got no exposure and is not going to get infected. So I didn't have it here with me. Since I produced this presentation, I need to say, please wear your mask, but wear a better quality mask as well. So I always advise wear a FFP2 mask, up it from the normal surgical mask that you've been wearing. FFP2, please. Wear it and wear it properly. You can see the two arrows over there, pinched over here and snugged over here. It's got to be snug and tight. But an FFP2 is a much tighter fit. And I would say, remember, I don't want you to have lung damage. I don't want you to be disabled for life. I don't want you to be harmed by an infection that you take multiple precautions against. So the multiple precautions that you take are: avoid getting close to people that you don't know, avoid crowds of people, avoid closed indoor spaces, wear a mask, wear a high specification FFP2 mask, and get immunized. And when you put all those layers together, you are in the best possible position to protect your health. And that's the game. Better times will arrive. Here we are. This is a multiple slices that I like to encourage people. Keep your distance, wear your mask, have your hand hygiene, and if you're in a crowded place, stay there for as short a period of time as possible, and then take part in the contact tracing and all the other things that the governments do. But my view is you need to look after yourself. So, observe, prepare, practice, and get immunized. And when you get immunized, it's the best thing you can do. So what would I do? What would I do personally? What would I advise all of you is, everything else is so difficult, right? The masks, the social distancing, the crowded buses, the trains. We want to interact. We want to be out and about. We need to go shopping. What can you do? Immunize, immunize, immunize. It is giving you one great big layer of protection. So I would do that. So what I say is, play the game of chess. Play it slowly, carefully, strategically. Don't get infected. Don't infect others. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, better times will arrive. It's just a question of, in the meantime, play that game of chess, smart and clever, and don't get checkmate. All right? Just bear with us. Better times will come. This is not forever. It really isn't forever. And just be patient. Be patient, but be careful. Immunize, protect, wear your mask. Better times will arrive. If you're dead or if you're disabled for life, there is nothing I can do. You're either damaged goods or you've died. Tragic. Both of them are absolute tragedies. One way not to die and not to have damaged lungs is that multiple layer of protection measures. And I will stop there and I'll take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Bharat. It's absolutely fascinating. I learn so much every time I come on a call with you, and I wish my teachers were like you when I was at school. I might have learned a bit more. That is brilliant, and it's on a serious note, it's really useful to understand and to see the kind of medicine and the science behind everything. So thank you very much for that. So as Bharat said, we're going to open up to any questions you all might have. You're welcome to pop them in the chat and I'll read them out for you. Or if you'd prefer to say them over video, which might be nice because there's not too many of us on the call, if you just raise your physical hand or your virtual hand, we will come to you one by one. Hi, Lawrence. Should we come to you first?
Thank you, Roger. Yes, I'd like to say that was an absolutely very informative and a wonderful presentation, Bharat. I'd just like to ask you, in terms of vaccination moving down through the age range, the point is that we want to, as I understand it, achieve herd immunity as much as possible. So what are your views on how far down the age range you feel it's appropriate to go in terms of vaccination to try to achieve that herd immunity?
Well, thank you, Lawrence. That's a very important question, because I know I'm on holiday, but I also look at this as my public health duty. So I woke up this morning to the news that 16-year-olds and above will be offered the vaccine, and I was very busy on the media giving my opinion, and I'm very happy to share opinion with everyone here present. So I have been campaigning for a long time that it is important to immunize school children, and my reasons for saying so are as follows. Whatever these people in SAGE and JCVI and elsewhere wish to say and have been saying, and I'm saying it here on record for a long time, is that school children don't do much harm. I disagree with them vehemently. School children do get infected. School children do pass on their infections to older people, and school children do generate lots of infections because they're a mixing bowl. So one way to reduce schools in generated infections, to maintain continuity in schools of education without the disruption of we've got a case now, we've got to tell this bubble to go home and stay at home, immunize. And when you immunize, you protect the person. That immunized person generates fewer virus particles, so they generate fewer new cases. They are protected from long COVID. And if a sudden variant were to arise, like I said in my presentation, there is cross immunity, alpha, beta, delta, all protected by the vaccines. Some slightly less than other, but at least protected. So if a sudden variant were to arise, which was causing severe disease in the younger age group, there will be cross immunity already present because you did a preemptive strike and immunized your 12 years old and above children. So I welcome the move today to immunize 16-year-olds and above. I welcome the move that younger people who have got clinical conditions or concerns be immunized, but I would really like to press for all children 12 years and above to be immunized, because we do that. There is already a precedent. We do that with seasonal influenza vaccine every year. Schools immunization program for seasonal influenza, we already do that. Secondly, we already do that preventative program for HPV virus. Yeah, so it isn't something new, and this is protective and preventative. My answer is I would like 12-year-olds and above to be immunized, not only 16-year-olds and above. And the countries that are already doing it are not basket cases. America, Canada, France, Netherlands, Ireland, New Zealand, Israel. So I feel that for some reason there is a bit of foot dragging by the UK government on immunizing 12-year-olds and above. They're going through it slowly. I wish they would have just done it as we have a schools immunization program. In fact, I personally believe a schools immunization program will achieve more greater good than the boosters program.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Lawrence, and for that fantastic response, Bharat. Cavs admin, we're going to come to you next. I saw you had your hands up. I know that's not your real name. You're on mute at the moment. There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Barrett. That was absolutely fascinating, your presentation. Just following on the question actually from what Lawrence raised there. It wasn't what I was going to ask actually, but I'm going to ask you your opinion on something. Something I saw on the breakfast news, I think it was this week, where they're talking about bribing the younger generation to have the vaccines, because we're hearing that lots of the younger children are still thinking, I don't need to be vaccinated, you know, and won't have the vaccinations or whatever. And that the NHS, basically, my understanding was from what the presenters were saying, it's not unusual for the NHS to use bribes. For example, like if you're overweight, they would give you slimming vouchers or whatever, and using bribes to get the younger people to have the vaccines. What's your thoughts around that?
I'm vehemently against it, and I have said so on record. So I have been saying, neither your stick nor your carrots will work, and the way you have gone about it is so incorrect, it baffles me. And the reason why it baffles me is as follows. I am a British graduate. I have worked in the United Kingdom for 35 years as a doctor, and we have never gone down the route of inducements to get vaccinated. There may be inducements for exercise and weight loss and alcohol, etc. But with respect to inducements, going down the United States model and some other places baffles me, because I am a veteran of the MMR vaccine scare, the link between MMR and autism and so on. And what did I do as a doctor out in the field? I spoke to the parents. I went to community centers. I spoke to pregnant mothers. I spoke to mothers in their toddler groups, etc. I did epidemiology. I said to them, bring me your problems. I'm going to answer your questions, your issues, and your concerns for you, and show you the benefit versus the risks of not immunizing against the MMR. And similarly, that is the approach I would take. You know, to give me a little Uber thank you, or a little voucher at whatever eating place or whatever, I feel is insulting, because the main point is I want to communicate to people and say, this vaccine is going to save your life if ever you were going to encounter the virus in an odd way. It will protect you, your family, and it is the best thing one can do. And what are its risk profile? Very low. There are some idiosyncratic reactions in some people. We get this. By and large, it is a very safe vaccine. I don't think going down the bribery route is a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't think going down the sticks route is either a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I'm on the same page with you there. If I might just ask you one more thing, which is what I was going to ask you. The home self-testing kits that we're encouraged to do. I don't really know how to put this, but trying to sort of say, how effective are they when we do home testing?
They are not very effective, and we are lulled into a false sense of reassurance. And I have been saying this since they were deployed. And if you look at fellow scientists like myself, check out my colleague from over 30 years, Professor Alison Pollock, and others, they have all been saying the same thing. You can wave a wand in your mouth and get a negative result by design. And in the best of hands, we get a 40% error rate anyway. So in Southend, where I have the opportunity to influence, I tell my team, this is what we're going to do. We do a little assessment of, 10 questions. How are you? Any new illnesses? Any new headache? Any new runny nose? Any change in your demeanor? Any tiredness? Any change in smell and taste? Anything new? Have you done the test? Have you done it properly? Have you really done it properly? We put the two things together and then say, on balance, you test negative, rather than you just waved a wand in your mouth and said, I'm negative. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We're going to move to the chat for a few questions, if that's okay, Bharat, which I'll read out to you. The first one is from Susan, who's speaking about her and her husband. She says, we've had 2 Pfizer vaccines and would not like the AstraZeneca. Is the Pfizer booster okay?
Yes. So it's good. It's good to learn. This is really good stuff. This is my bread and butter. So if you have you're going to learn so much. You know more than most people do today. So let's do this one for you. If you have the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine and you have it repeatedly, eventually you will make antibodies against the chimpanzee adenovirus. So I inject you with the chimpanzee adenovirus. Your body says, I know you chimpanzee adenovirus. I'm going to attack you and prevent you from entering the cell, right? So technically, you could make antibodies against the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. And therefore, after the third, fourth, fifth repeated injection of AstraZeneca Oxford, it may reduce its ability to induce immunity. The Pfizer BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines work in a different way. It's just a lipid little ball, 10 to the minus 9. It enters the cell and it doesn't, generate immunity against that little cell, little ball of fat that's coming your way. So if you were immunized with AstraZeneca Oxford, which most older people were, then it is a good thing to boost you with Pfizer or Moderna in the autumn. If you were immunized with Pfizer or Moderna primary course, your booster will still be Pfizer because that's what the booster doses are going to be.
That's great. Thank you, Barrett. Did that answer your question, Susan? Yeah, big thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you. The next question is from Natasha. I've recently been told my lymph nodes are enlarged in my throat and that my body is trying to fight an infection. This was discovered through an MRI scan. I was initially told to delay the vaccine. No one can give me advice if it's okay to have the vaccine now if there are issues with the lymph nodes. I also have issues with allergies.
Okay, Natasha, it's very simple, very straightforward. Yes, we need to celebrate. I promise you we need to celebrate this. Look at this. Here we are in the United Kingdom. You've got enlarged lymph nodes. You end up with an MRI scan. How brilliant is that? Yeah. If you were in another part of the world, you would either go bankrupt because you can't afford an MRI scan, or you would not get an MRI scan. And I know why an MRI scan was done. It was to exclude any other pathology like, leukemias, that sort of thing. So we really, really must fight to keep that NHS free at the point of need, in your case, Natasha. Isn't that wonderful? So on to answering your question. It looks like very clear that your MRI was fine. In other words, you're fighting an infection. I think you have had enough time for an acute infection to have come and gone. So my answer to you would be get immunized, right? There is no need for you to say, I have got something else going on, therefore I can't get immunized. My advice to you is, yes, your lymph nodes have been enlarged, but there is nothing big going on there, and that infection will have come and gone, but you will probably have some enlarged lymph nodes for a little while. But in the meantime, we need to protect you. So I would go and get yourself protected and immunized. With respect to allergies and things, the allergic reaction to the Pfizer Moderna vaccines is a very, very, very rare thing, unusual. So most people are not allergic to the vaccines.
Thank you very much, Barrett. And correct me if I'm wrong, but was the initial guidance in terms of allergies that it was only if you carried an EpiPen that it was serious enough to even consider not having the vaccine? Is that right?
Well, it was severe allergies to severe, thank you for asking that actually, because it's good to clarify. Severe allergies, and they defined it as somebody who's allergic to a multitude of things, as well as needs to carry things like an EpiPen as an example. But to be honest with you, you really need to be allergic to the components of the Pfizer vaccine, which we don't know if you are or not. But it would be the sort of person who would be hyperallergenic to other things would be somebody who has allergies to peanuts, bees, pollen, chemicals, long list of allergies, that sort of person. And they would carry an EpiPen as well. But even then, all is not lost. AstraZeneca Oxford, if one is not suitable.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bharat. The next question is from Susan, who asks, do you think it's okay to have the booster the same day as a flu jab?
Yes, why not? Yes, and I think that is the idea for the booster and seasonal influenza vaccine program. And please, I don't really want you to think, oh my God, my body is going to be overloaded with antigens. Think about it. You go on the red bus home, or you go on the tube home, or you come into a crowded office. You're exposed to thousands and thousands of people's bugs. You know, there's streptococcus, staphylococcus, rotavirus, influenza, you name it, you're exposed to it, thousands of it every day. So in this case, you're being exposed to two antigens, only two, influenza, SARS-CoV-2. No problem. Don't worry about it at all. It's not going to overwhelm your immune system, not at all.
That's great. Thank you, Bharat. Very clear guidance there. The next question from Jackie is around the booster. She says the government has announced that booster vaccines will be available for over 50s from September. What is the advised gap from when people had their second vaccine to when they should receive their booster?
Okay. That's easy to answer. And if you follow me on Twitter and media, you will know what I said about this. So I said in my last interview on Israel TV, where is the evidence that the immunity is decreasing such that we need boosters? I would much rather we shared the vaccines globally and also considered immunizing children. So I know I'm not answering your question, but I will in a minute. So whilst the booster program has been introduced, I'm a little bit thinking, is it really necessary when you are not immunizing children and the rest of the world is not immunized at all? Anyway, in answer to your question, when can I have my booster having had my primary course? I would say you really need to leave at least 6 months behind. It's not that if you have it at 3 months or 2 months, any harm will come to you. Not at all. But the idea of a booster is to, if you can imagine a graph like this, okay? So your antibody levels are here, and then through the process of time, your antibodies start to drop. And as they're starting to drop, at that point, you want to give a booster so your antibody levels go up. So if you left it for a year or 6 months, that's perfectly okay. Ideally, it should be an interval of a year or nearly a year.
That's great. Thank you, Bharat. And in terms of that process for the boosters, will people be automatically contacted by their GPs, for example?
Yes, that's my understanding, that they will be invited for their seasonal influenza vaccine and their SARS-CoV-2 boosters.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And we've got a couple of comments, not questions, in the chat. I can see that Michelle has found this presentation really useful. She said, sharing this presentation would be a much better way to reach our young people. Thank you for that, Michelle. Natasha says, thank you so much, with a big smiley face for your answer to her question, Bharat. Jackie says, thank you as well. And then we've got a couple more questions, which will take us to the end of the session. And then, Bharat, we can ask you to close. Okay. The next question is from Andy. What advice would you give parents to help assuage their children's concerns and the positive impact it could have to themselves and their family?
It's a good question, and it's important, and I have similar age children as well. So I would say it's good for you. You are protected. You're protected against future horrible variants. You're protecting your grandparents by being less infectious. You're protecting your vulnerable friends. You're protecting yourself from a potential long COVID. So the benefits are considerable for you. It is your good health, your family's well-being, your friends' well-being, but most importantly, you are the most important person, and you are being protected. So I would, my line would be, go for the self rather than the altruistic, you're helping others, because it does, and I'm not telling fibs, it helps you and it helps others. And that's the line I would take.
That's great. Thank you, Bharat. And Susan is kind of agreeing with you there. She says, I agree. If Dr. Bharat could speak to the nation, please, would listen. He speaks clearly and without waffle. And I know that you do your fair share of that, Bharat, don't you? The last question is around mixing vaccines. I'd already had 2 doses of the vaccine produced by Sinopharm before coming to the UK, and now I'm not sure if I can get the Pfizer because their technical backgrounds are different. I'm having a hard time finding some reliable information to advise me. I asked my GP and they couldn't give me a definite answer either. Many international students have the same problem as me, as whether we should mix vaccinations or not.
It's easy. I'm so sorry you're all being tied up in knots. Please be reassured. It's perfectly okay to mix vaccines. It's okay. So I haven't got Sinopharm in the UK. I will give you the next available appropriate vaccine. Job done. Please don't worry about it. Right? You heard it from me. Please take it to your GP. It's perfectly okay. It's
very clear message there. Thank you, Bharat. We don't have any more messages in the chat, and I can't see any hands in the room. So I think we can bring the session to a close. Before I hand over to Dr. Bharat to close, I'd just like to say thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. I find these sessions really useful, but they wouldn't be the same without the community support that we see. I hope you all have a nice evening. And Bharat, I'm going to hand over to you for any final words that you'd like to give.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and it really is a pleasure. And I hope I'm saving it's not I. My team at Southend are brilliant, all of you. So I hope we're keeping you safe. And even if we save one life, it's a job worth doing. My advice is don't get infected, play for the long term, get immunized, and better times will return. So don't fret, better times will return. Protect yourself in the meantime.